asked her to marry me on the River Seine.
There was a ring that I saw 2 years ago. He went back for it and found it. Somebody bought it. He found it, bought it from them, and he proposed with it.
When David Bowie and Iman's love story began, the world was captivated. A rock legend and a supermodel, two icons who seemed untouchable, yet their bond was deeply real. After Bowie's death in 2016, Iman vowed never to remarry, calling him her husband forever. But now, after 22 years, the daughter they shared has grown up, and the world is stunned by her transformation. Who is this young woman? And how does she carry the legacy of two legends? Stay tuned, because her story may leave you breathless. Iman's roots in Somalia. Before she became one of the most recognizable supermodels in the world, Iman's story began in the heart of Somalia, a place where tradition, family, and resilience shaped her character long before fame ever did. Born Zahra Mohammed Abdul Majid in Mogadishu on July 25, 1955, her life was marked from the beginning by a sense of uniqueness and purpose. She was the first girl born in 6 generations of her family, a milestone that instantly made her presence special. In a lineage dominated by sons, Iman's arrival felt like history resetting itself, as though her family knew she was destined to stand out. Her father, Mohammed Abdul Majid, served as a diplomat and even represented Somalia as ambassador to Saudi Arabia. This meant that Iman's childhood was not only influenced by family traditions, but also touched by an awareness of international culture and politics. Her mother, Marian, was a gynecologist, an accomplished woman in her own right who provided a model of independence and intellect for her daughter. Growing up with such strong figures gave Iman a foundation of discipline and education, qualities that would serve her well once she stepped onto the world stage. Her grandfather christened her Iman, which means faith in Arabic. He supposed that this name would serve as a lodestar, a blessing, safeguarding her and ensuring her success in a world that often underappreciates women. In the future, Iman would think about this gift as one where the strength of her name became truly part of her identity. What started as a blessing from her grandfather became the affirmation she carried with her into every room, runway, and camera lens. Iman's early years, however, were far from glamorous. She spent her formative years with her grandparents in Somalia, immersed in tradition weaving his life within the pride of her culture. At 4 years old, she was registered at a boarding school in Egypt, a place that widened her experience even further. This was where Arabic, English, and Italian were jointly spoken. The education was diverse as well, going beyond the books. Living away from home so early gave her a sense of independence and adaptability qualities that would serve her well in the stormy years to come. But as Somalia entered a phase of political turmoil, her father considered relocating the family first back to Mogadishu and then to Kenya in pursuit of better stability. It gave me a unique perspective on both the fragility and resilience of life in Africa. These were lessons that grounded her even when her future traveled far from home. By the time she hit the University of Nairobi, Iman was a confident young girl with ambitions of her own. She chose political science for her course of study, reflective of her interest in governance and his father's background in diplomacy. At this stage, modeling was nowhere on the horizon. Everything revolved around American photographer Peter Beard, who discovered her on campus. The photographer was instantly taken with her copper-toned skin, graceful frame, and long neck, and Beard insisted that she had model potential. Iman did not melt at first, however. In her self-image, She was not something of beauty, but a serious student pursuing goals with roots in politics. Beard was persistent, though, and eventually she agreed to get in front of the camera. This would alter the course of her life altogether. Within one of those cycles, she would make it to America, and by 1976, there would be a Vogue around the world with her cover on it. Iman was always different from so many others, not only because of her stunning looks, but also because of the very strength of her Somali roots. She walked with a sense of dignity and reminded people in many of her interviews that the beauty they were beholding was the typical Somali beauty and nothing artificial or exotic. Such cultural pride constituted her appeal, and she was teaching the fashion world that elegance could, in fact, be celebrated and based on heritage. Designers such as Yves Saint Laurent, Gianni Versace, and Donna Karan appreciated her presence not merely as a model, but as a source of inspiration. However, long before she became an inspiration to the designers, Iman was simply a little girl from Somalia. Her name means faith, and her family believed she was destined for greatness. Her early years passed in Mogadishu, Cairo, and Nairobi, which gave her strength, adaptability, and an identity that even fame could never erase. Iman's rise from Somali student to global fashion muse set the stage, but the man who would change her life was still years away. The chameleon of rock. If Iman's story was defined by tradition and elegance, David Bowie's life was marked by reinvention, rebellion, and boundless creativity. Born David Robert Jones on January 8, 1947, in Brixton, London, his path to stardom was anything but smooth. In his early years, Bowie was just another aspiring musician struggling to find his sound. He played in local bands and tried to stand out in the crowded music scene of the 1960s, but his first attempts went largely unnoticed. Even his debut album in 1967 failed to spark much interest. To many, it might have seemed like the end of a short-lived dream. But Bowie was no ordinary artist. His determination to reinvent himself would become his greatest weapon. The breakthrough came in 1969 with the release of Space Oddity. Inspired by the Apollo 11 moon landing, the haunting single told the story of the fictional astronaut Major Tom and immediately captured the imagination of listeners. The song climbed the UK charts and marked the beginning of Bowie's ascent to stardom. Yet, Bowie was never content with repeating success. To him, each hit was not an endpoint, but a stepping stone to a new creative persona. His restlessness gave rise to one of his most well-known alter egos, Ziggy Stardust. In 1972, Bowie introduced the world to the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Ziggy came to be more than a character. With his flamboyant costumes, androgynous looks, and bold stage presence, he became a cultural revolution. Starman and Suffragette City were more than hits. They were anthems for outsiders, dreamers, and anyone who ever felt out of place. Bowie's fluid embrace of identity and norm-breaking became a pathway to heroism for all those who found themselves on the edge of society. On the contrary, Bowie should never restrict himself to an idea, even though it was one of the most iconic representations, Ziggy. However, during the mid-70s, it threw away all the glitter and entered upon what it called plastic soul. The joint effort with John Lennon, My 1975, went on to top the Billboard in the US and reminded naysayers of all nationalities, British or not, that Bowie could cross over anywhere. His album, Young Americans, demonstrated how he could easily mix funk, soul, and rock into something new. Critics may have hated that he can never last in his different pictures, but fans love him for his courage. And that same spirit transformed into the shape of an acting career as well. The 1976 sci-fi movie The Man Who Fell to Earth starring Bowie, made him recognized not only as a musician, but as a true performer and storyteller. Shortly afterward, he launched his legendary Berlin trilogy, Low, 1977, Heroes, 1977, and Lodger, 1979, in collaboration with producer Brian Eno. These highly experimental electronic heavy albums set new frontiers for rock and will influence many generations of artists to come. Heroes in particular became one of Bowie's best classic songs, acclaimed due to its raw and uncompromised passion and defiance. From the 1980s onward, Bowie had metamorphosed into an international pop icon. His 1983 album Let's Dance was a worldwide success story, from which emerged hits like Modern Love and China Girl. The dancing beat of the album brought Bowie to arenas and disco halls around the world, introducing him to an altogether new audience. He was no longer a cult hero, but in the firmament of the common. And yet, he never renounced his art. In every decade that followed, Bowie was always the iconoclast, be it through his band Tin Machine in the late 1980s, the making of further electronic albums in the 1990s, or his highly praised latter work, Black Star, which was released only 2 days prior to his demise in 2016. But behind the glitter and fame, Bowie was searching for something he couldn't find in his art alone, until one chance encounter, a love story like no other. By the end of the 1980s, David Bowie was a global superstar. He had conquered music, cinema, and fashion. Yet behind the dazzling performances was a man who still longed for companionship. Friends often described him as warm and witty, but also quietly lonely. Despite his fame, Bowie wanted what every human being seeks: a partner who could see beyond the fame, the personas, and the music. That's when fate intervened in the most unexpected way. Teddy Antolin, Bowie's longtime hairdresser and confidant, had seen this loneliness up close. He knew Bowie needed someone who could balance his intensity with grace. At a party in Los Angeles, Teddy met the woman he believed was perfect for him, Iman. Known worldwide as a supermodel, she was not just beautiful, but also intelligent, grounded, and compassionate. Teddy decided to play matchmaker. Though Bowie was based in New York and Iman lived in Los Angeles, Teddy invited them both to his birthday dinner, secretly hoping sparks would fly. What unfolded that evening was nothing short of magic. It was a night straight out of a blockbuster movie, their first meeting. It all started with Bowie rolling up in a white Mustang, clad in immaculate white denim. Moments after, a sleek black Mercedes would have been stopped before his door, with Iman in the all-black leather ensemble that stole the room. Teddy himself would recall that the very atmosphere changed. Bowie couldn't avert his gaze from her. Hours passed with the two of them talking, with Iman cautious while Bowie thought otherwise. For him, at first sight, it was love unfeigned. In later interviews, Bowie admitted not being able to sleep thereafter, as his mind was fired up by thoughts of her. It took time for Iman. Having tasted the bitter fruits of high-visibility relationships, she knew both ends. That charm would not suffice to last through the real thing. While Bowie was charming and eye-catching, she wanted to see if there were more layers behind the rock star image. Bowie, however, wasn't going to let her slip away. His pursuit was neither flashy nor superficial. It was rather gentle, persistent, and utterly sincere. Iman flew to Paris soon after their first meeting, and soon after that, Bowie began sending her flowers each day to her hotel. Each bouquet carried not only beauty, but also intention. This was showing her that his feelings weren't fleeting. Upon Iman's return, Bowie surprised her at the airport and waited patiently for her arrival. For Iman, These things were so profound. She admitted later that Bowie had properly wooed her than any other man ever had. It was not about showy gestures for the media. It was about thoughtfulness, patience, and showing up. The two tipped into a very pale romance. On one of those very rare moments, he told friends under his oath that it was with this woman that he could bet his money. Years later, to interviewers, he said, "I'd never gone after anything in my life with such passion. I just knew she was it." The conviction was immovable. Gradually, Iman came to feel it too. At length, she realized she was not falling for the rock legend known as David Bowie. She was falling for David Jones, the man beneath the persona. Bowie didn't just propose to Iman once, he proposed to her twice. The first time she hesitated. For Iman, marriage was not just between two persons. It was where families, cultures, and values intertwined. She wanted Bowie to meet her family and understand the full meaning of being her husband. Bowie, being respectful, did not push. He waited, listened, and validated her concerns about their bond by expressing his own faithfulness to her. Sometime later, Bowie asked once more, this time on a yacht in the middle of the Adriatic Sea, when he gave Iman a rare 15-carat star sapphire ring he had spent months searching for. Iman accepted. Together, they chose a 14-carat canary yellow diamond, a token of their taste and togetherness. Their love wasn't just about red carpets and photo shoots. It was about building a quiet life together, away from the world's gaze. A private life in New York. After the whirlwind of romance and a fairy tale wedding, David Bowie and Iman made a decision that surprised many. Instead of living constantly in the limelight, they chose to step away from the glare of cameras and settle into a quieter life together. For Bowie, who had spent decades being scrutinized on stage and in tabloids, the shift was profound. And for Iman, who had also grown up in the public eye, it was a conscious act of self-preservation. Together, they created a sanctuary in New York City, where love, not fame, became the heartbeat of their lives. Their home in Manhattan was far removed from the stereotypes of celebrity excess. Bowie and Iman embraced normalcy, something both of them craved after years of international attention. Iman once shared that Bowie was even more of a homebody than she was. He preferred nights in, surrounded by music, books, and family, rather than endless parties. Though he was one of the most recognizable musicians in the world, at home, he was simply David Jones, her husband. For Iman, David Bowie was a great performer, but she loved David Jones, the man. In her view, this distinction was crucial. The face of Bowie, with the glam rock star, the avant-garde experimenter, and the ever-changing icon, was for all the world to see. But David Jones belonged to her and their family. It was in the small, unspectacular ways that their love really flourished, away from the limelight, such as having dinner at home, walking the streets of New York City, and spending time with their daughter, Alexandria Zara Jones, whom they affectionately called Lexi. In August 2000, Lexi made a better addition to their world. Becoming a father again at 53 was life-changing to Bowie, who has been through decades of music, art, and fame. Lexi, he said, was one of the happiest moments in his life because it felt like a long-awaited gift. He wanted both him and Iman for their daughter to have as normal a childhood as possible. They have cloaked her image from prying paparazzi and rejected the idea of bringing her out in public, but concentrated on nurturing her at their home. Despite all this hullabaloo, indeed, Bowie and Iman insisted that their family life was just as ordinary. Iman described that their home was not largely the same, a house of very normal, very simple joys, rather than endless razzmatazz. Bowie would play music or draw with Lexi, so memory was very personal and kept outside the door. In interviews, he said his family is the greatest joy of his life, even beyond the thrill of performance. Bowie had to work hard to gain some balance in his life. He drank very little, exercised regularly, and modified his lifestyle to support the stability of his marriage. Friends said they witnessed the change in him, claiming he was so level and buoyant with the spirit after marrying Iman, besides being his partner, an anchor that allowed him to steer through his tumultuous life of celebrity almost intact. Of course, this meant a price on their lives. They refused to make any joint public appearances or say much of anything ever in interviews regarding their relationship. This just fostered more curiosity among the fans and the media, who felt starved for more tidbits on their lives. Besides, one thing was that Lily and Iman stood firm. Their marriage and family would take precedence over whatever public opinion wants. Iman once stated in an interview very frankly, "Our bedroom, our home life, that's ours." She was artfully drawing the proverbial line, fame could not enter. But while Bowie and Iman protected Lexi from fame, the world was always curious about the child of such iconic parents. Lexi Jones grows up. For much of her early life, Alexandria Lexi Zara Jones lived in the shadows of her parents' fame, but by choice, not by accident. Born on August 15, 2000, she was the cherished daughter of two icons. Yet David Bowie and Iman made it their mission to give her something they themselves had rarely known: a normal childhood. While paparazzi circled and the public clamored for glimpses of the little girl, Bowie and Iman fiercely guarded her privacy, allowing her to grow up away from the noise of celebrity culture. Unlike many celebrity children who grow up under constant scrutiny, Lexi was raised quietly in New York City. She attended school like any other child, played with friends, and enjoyed a childhood where she wasn't constantly reminded that her father was a rock legend and her mother a supermodel. Iman especially emphasized the importance of privacy, often saying that she wanted Lexi to have the freedom to discover herself before the world inevitably turned its gaze toward her. As Lexi aged, this protective cocoon allowed for the formation of her individual character. For her father, life was a series of reinventions. For her mother, it was about elegance. But for Lexi, her voice found expression through something entirely personal: art. From her teenage years, she began sketching, painting, and other creative pursuits. In adulthood, she had formed her own distinctive style, a medley of bold colors, abstract figures, and dreamlike themes that spoke of her curious yet contemplative mind. Glimpses into her world were rare since her sharing on Instagram. Instead of focusing on red carpets or photo shoots, her feed featured canvases with characters that fluctuated between whimsy and deep emotionality. "Art is like meditation to me, and a way of expressing my feelings and connecting to something bigger than myself," she noted. So, like her father's music, her art was both something personal yet universal. It found a resonance with the people following her work on the net. Lexi is actually just cultivated by his parents, who have bestowed upon her the bowing eyes of Bowie and the mnemonic features of Iman. However, Lexi was never the kind to rush into the modeling world. Actually, when she graduated at 18 years, agencies came circling, eager to sign the daughter of two legends. But Iman squashed the entire much-held excitement, advising her daughter to enjoy this privilege of privacy a little longer. "You can all wait," Iman reasoned, encouraging Lexi to live for herself before stepping into any limelight. This was based on experience advice coming from a woman who has seen both the good and bad sides of fame. This didn't quite mean that Lexi did not have presence. Occasionally, though rarely, she would take her fans into bits and pieces of her world. whether it be a cheeky selfie, a post honoring her mother, or a sly suggestion regarding how her father has influenced her. Each time, the internet was filled with amazement, almost spellbound at how closely she mirrored both parents. The comments would inundate fans with comments reminding them bluntly that they are looking at love personified from where Bowie and Iman stand in Bring On the Last Attempt. Yet Bowie's legacy didn't stop with Lexi. He had another child whose life took a very different path, Duncan Jones, Bowie's firstborn. Long before David Bowie and Iman welcomed Lexi into the world, Bowie had already experienced fatherhood. His first child, Duncan Zoe Haywood Jones, was born on May 30th, 1971, to Bowie and his then-wife, Angela Barnett. At the time, Bowie's career was on the rise, and Duncan's arrival thrust the young family into the public eye. Tabloids affectionately nicknamed him Zowie Bowie, a moniker that followed him throughout his childhood. Yet as Duncan grew older, he began to step away from the shadow of that name, determined to define his identity on his own terms. Unlike Lexi, who grew up with parents deliberately protecting her from fame, Duncan's early life was spent in the spotlight. His childhood was marked by his father's growing celebrity and his parents' tumultuous marriage. After Bowie and Angie's divorce in 1980, Duncan went to live with his father, beginning a new chapter that emphasized stability. While his upbringing was unconventional, his bond with Bowie grew stronger over the years, particularly as Duncan began to carve out his own path. Education has played a significant role in Duncan's story. He first attended Gordonstoun, a boarding school in Scotland with reputedly tough academics, before heading to the United States to study philosophy at Bard College in Ohio. Afterward, he returned to London in pursuit of his true love, filmmaking. He went to the London International Film School and submerged himself in directing and storytelling, graduating in 2001. Unlike many children of the stars who don't seem to have their career paths delineated, Duncan had one clear vision in terms of where he wanted to go. His launching pad occurred in 2009 with the film Moon. A low-budget sci-fi drama featuring Sam Rockwell, it became the darling of both critics and the intelligent storytelling, with the emotional crux element securing Duncan a BAFTA for Outstanding Debut, heralding the arrival of a great new voice in cinema. Bowie, who had steadfastly stood by his son's road, I could not be prouder. Duncan remembers how his father refused to look at Moon until it was finished, so that I could make it without him bothering me. After Moon joined, Duncan went on to further his career with such qualities-driven attributes that made it first possible, from the pillar to the tree. In 2011, Duncan made his movie Source Code, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, further strengthening his capabilities. In 2016, he realized what appeared to be the zenith of his career with the production of Warcraft, a fantasy blockbuster made from the very famous video games. The movie was poorly rated, but it had a remarkable score on the foreign box office, bringing out the fact that Duncan could possibly take on such huge projects. But most importantly, he proved to all that his own creative voice was totally, his father's legacy was much the same, but differentiated by an equally strong drive to blow the mind layout. Outside his working life, Duncan had a family of his own. In 2012, he married Rodinei Ronquillo, a photographer, and had proposed 3 hours prior to her being diagnosed with breast cancer. The two then entered into a beautiful yet nerve-wracking life of love and faithfulness through treatment, eventually coming out with 2 children. They welcomed their son, Stenton David Jones, reminiscent of Bowie, just 6 months after Bowie passed away in 2016. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter, Zoe Tallulah, thus offering Duncan an opportunity to extend the Bowie lineage in his own way. As Bowie's children followed their own creative paths, Lexi found her own way to honor her father, one that fans could never forget. Lexi Today, a living tribute. As the years passed, Alexandria Lexi Zara Jones grew from a child shielded from the public eye into a young woman whose presence now captivates fans of both her parents. At 22, Lexi is no longer just David Bowie and Iman's daughter. She has become her own person, a living reflection of two extraordinary legacies and proof that artistry, elegance, and individuality can live on through the next generation. Lexi's resemblance to her parents is striking. From Iman, she inherited high cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes, and an effortless sense of elegance. From Bowie, she carries that same piercing gaze and ethereal aura that made him such a mesmerizing figure. Whenever she shares a rare photo of herself on social media, fans around the world are quick to comment on how she embodies the best of both her mother and father. But her beauty, though undeniable, is only part of the story. What makes Lexi remarkable is how she has chosen to honor her family while still forging her own path. The many tributes she has paid to her father form the crux of Lexi's story. In 2018, on the second anniversary of Bowie's passing, she revealed a crescent moon tattoo with the words Daddy X and the years 1947 to 2016. A deeply private act, it bound her for life to a man whose art touched millions of lives, but whose most important designation for her was that of father. Another anniversary saw her share an old video from her childhood with Bowie seated at a keyboard, gently directing her tiny hands across the keys while she captioned the video. 7 years ago today, I miss you. These glimpses into the address were gut-wrenching reminders of Bowie's absence for fans, but affirmations of a bond for Lexi that death could never sever. Music has also begun to filter into Lexi's life context. While she has never explicitly stated her desire to pursue music professionally, she has shared snippets of herself singing and writing songs. In a candid video, she admitted that she was nervous about sharing an original track, saying that she went back and forth between hating it and liking it. Still, her performance echoed the raw honesty of her father if there was any doubt in her mind. Music, similarly to her visual artwork, seems still. She continues to paint for most of her time. According to Lexi, art is like meditation for her because it centers her in the present. Very vibrant and colorful, her work is really deeply personal as well, full of abstract figures, dreamy faces, and surreal images. She prints her works on clothes and accessories and carries her creativity further to wear and share. It's not about fame or recognition, at least not for Lexi. It's about expression. Just like her father reinvented music and her mother redefined beauty standards, Lexi uses art to challenge himself and inspire others to own their individuality. David Bowie and Iman built a love story that defied fame and endured loss, and their daughter Lexi now carries that legacy into a new generation. She is both private and bold, creative and grounded, a true reflection of two icons. What do you think about Lexi's journey so far? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch the next video for more stories of legendary lives and their lasting impact.